This is Colin Stevens with the Better Men Connect podcast. Our goal is to educate and inspire you with authentic and honest conversations that can help you enhance your health, your relationships, and your overall personal growth. Thanks for tuning in. And we're back for another episode of the Better Men Connect podcast. I am your co-host, Colin Stevens, here with Bruce Stankavage. Welcome back, my man.
It's great to be here, man. Thank you.
Today we are talking about the Boogeyman. The Boogeyman. I remember when I was a kid, I used to go downstairs and like it was like the second house that we lived in, and there was an unfinished basement down there. Mm-hmm. So it had like, we lived in Maryland. We had basements. We don't have basements in Myrtle Beach here. Right. So that's where the laundry room was. It was a concrete floor. It had the poles, the dividing poles, the support beams, that kind of stuff, right? Man, I remember my mom asking me to go down and, get a laundry basket or something. And there was a light there, but it hung from the ceiling, and it had one of the chain pull things, right? Yeah. Okay, so dating myself a little bit here. But, so I couldn't get to it right away. So I would go down the steps.
In the dark.
Right on. And I remember being like, there's a witch. Somewhere in here is a witch. Or somewhere in here is the gremlin that I saw on that movie that we watched 2 weeks ago. So I remember just sprinting down there, searching for the laundry basket in the dark and sprinting out. Not even trying to get the light, right? And sprinting out and feeling like I escaped. Once I got back up the steps, I escaped. And so there was a time where I went downstairs and the light was already on.
Did you feel fine then?
And I felt fine.
Interesting.
No fear. Same spot, same condition. The only thing that was different was the light was on. Right. And so as I've gotten older, this scenario has played in my mind, and I'm like, wow, how often in my life do I just need to turn the light on?
Right.
And realize that the Boogeyman is not real, right? So today we're talking about fear, all right? Because fear, I believe, is the thing that holds us back the most in life. It's the final chapter of the book that I just wrote, Make Your Mark. But fear, I think if you look at all of the things that hold us back, if you trace them down to the very root of what they are, most oftentimes it's fear. And so, I want to unpack that. When I talk about fear, or I bring up what fears have you had in your life that you feel like have held you back the most, where does your mind go there?
Yeah, a lot of different places.
Yeah.
I feel like fear has been something that's been prevalent in my life the whole time.
Yeah.
Unfortunately. And I think the first memory is just the fear that I'm not worthy. Just this underlying sense of that I'm not worthy. I don't know where that came from, but it manifested really on the basketball court. The
worthy
fear
of what?
Love, probably. Attention. That's a good question. It's a deep question, but I think that's and I think I'm not the only one that struggles with that.
Yeah.
I think as humans, that's one of the core desires and needs that we want, is the sense of that we are worthy. We are worthy of love. We are worthy of belonging. We are worthy of connection, and so on. So that's where I go in that. And I think what that had caused me to do is then to kind of shrink back and not seek connection. Because I didn't feel like that my voice had any influence or power or significance. And so then I would just shrink back and, be back here and not share and offer, and so on. So that's kind of where it goes.
So there's that fear has followed you as you've grown up, as you've had 1 kid, 2 kids, 3 kids,
Yes.
Married, pretty successful businessman in real estate, and
Right.
the fear has always lingered.
Yeah, I think, one of the, what that triggered in my mind is I remember being a college basketball player, and I struggled with just being anxious before games. And how once I got into the business world, I thought maybe, I'll never be anxious again. And I realized early on, given an early presentation or a talk, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is the same feeling I felt before all those basketball games. And I was like, dang, here it is.
Yeah.
Here it is again, still present with me. And I remember I just felt like, oh gosh, this wasn't related to the basketball court. This wasn't related to the basketball court. And even as I'm talking, Colin, the thing that hits me is, the core fear is that people won't like me. That's where, it's all tied into love and identity and everything, but really that I worked really, really hard as a kid growing up to make sure that people liked me, and so it's the fear of not being liked.
Because that is a shitty feeling when you are unliked, rejected, not accepted.
Yes.
And so we often, I don't have a dissimilar story. Certainly we have different experiences, but to be accepted and not rejected, I would do a lot. And I didn't freaking realize it. That's what makes me angry. Like, even as I've gotten older, like, how come somebody didn't tell me? How come somebody didn't pull me aside and just say, fuck that, be yourself. And if they don't like you, it's okay. Because guess what? They don't like us anyway. Like we try so hard. We try so hard to make people like us. And whether they like us or not has something to do with them, not us.
And we don't even know if they like us or not. Like,
we don't know.
We're making up stories in our minds that, that look, does that mean he doesn't like me or she doesn't like me? Or what's that mean? And so on. Absolutely.
And so we're seeking approval. And for me, I sometimes it wasn't even seeking approval. It was seeking not to be rejected. And then it was like, man, like, do I need to alter myself? Am I not good enough as I am? So I need to change to make somebody happy or to make somebody accept me. And so then it's not this firm foundation that we're standing on, that we're growing on, that we're building our life on. It's this shaky, like, maybe I need to do this different. Maybe I need to do this different. And that's wildly frustrating. Like, I think a lot of our anger as people comes from that. If our core sense of like who we are is fighting to not be rejected and to be accepted and for people to like us, I think equally as core to us is the frustration of when we try so hard and still we can't control whether people like us or not.
Yeah, the myth of control, that we can control whether they like us or not. It's myth, like it's an illusion, so we might as well just go ahead and be whoever we are, because actually then we surround ourselves with like-minded people when we offer who we are. Because if someone likes me when I'm not being myself, they're not really liking the inside of me, because that's not really me, because I'm projecting an image or acting in a way that to get them to like me, or what I think they will like about me.
And what's crazy is this is for friends, this is for coaches, this is for whomever I'm trying to impress, or get to like me. Like I remember my biggest struggle as a college basketball player was trying to get my coach to like me. Because then I would, like, not to just hoop, not to kill it on the court, I was worried about whether he liked me or not.
Interesting,
And so finally, when I got beyond that, and I was like, fuck it, whether he likes me or not, I'm just going to go play. Then I realized I had my best, 15 games as a basketball player, because I didn't have that burden of trying, like it was a distraction from actually trying to do the thing I wanted to do well. I didn't know it.
Interesting. Yeah.
So how do you combat that?
I want to go back to something. For me, on the basketball court, as you say that, like, I was different. On the basketball court, it's almost like I had an alter ego that I would crush you, where I didn't care what anybody thought.
I'm not surprised. I've seen that in our one-on-one games. I've seen that in our shooting competitions over the years.
That I had this other Bruce that was just, that I would want to just dominate and crush people. And I always thought to myself, when I graduated college and stopped playing basketball, like for years I wanted to bring that aspect of who I was to other places, you know, and that was a struggle. You know, I couldn't. Yeah, I was too concerned of what everybody thought of me. But for some reason on that court, when I went out there, that I just played free. Like the basketball court for me was a safe place. So in many ways, it was the opposite. Opposite of your story.
Yeah.
Anyway, I just wanted to kind of throw that out there.
No, that's good, because we want people to also realize, even though we experience fear fear being the similarity, different for different reasons. Right. And so for those of you that are listening, like, we don't expect you to match up exactly with how we do, but it's probably that you've experienced some fear in one way or the other. So then how do you combat it?
Yeah, I think, good question. And this is really a recent, probably in the last 60 days, is the concept of this alter ego, you know, where we are not oneself. I used to think that I had one role. I had to be the same person in all the roles that I am, and that's just not true. You know what I mean? Because who I am as a father and how I interact and treat my kids, or what I offer them in terms of the energy, is different than when I'm on the basketball court, or when I'm lifting weights,
or negotiating a business deal.
a deal. So we have, or I'm not the same with my wife as I am with my kids. I'm not the same with you as I am with my boys. You know, and so that just made sense to me, and that's why that story of me being on the basketball court, I'm like, yeah, you know what? That's just a natural, intuitive way that we do things. We're not the same person in every situation, if that makes sense.
Yeah. No, because that's based on context.
Correct. Yes. Who do I need to be in this moment? Because who I need to be as a father when I come home is different than who I need to be if I'm negotiating a business deal. And I always tried to have them, I need to be this type of person in all these things, and that's like maddening. Like, because then I'd have conflict of, wait a minute, I thought I wanted to be this way.
Because naturally you're trying to adapt to the context.
Right.
And you're not, you're not trying to adapt. Naturally you adapt to a context, but you are fighting that adaptation.
Correct.
Because you're just trying to be singular.
Correct.
As though all context was the same, and they're not.
Right. Well,
which is interesting, because it goes back to our point of, hey, wait a minute. Be yourself.
Right.
Well, it's almost like, well, then what self? Right. Based upon what context, right? Because if I'm trying to alter myself a little bit because I'm trying to get people to accept me or like me or whatever, and then what I wish somebody would have told me was just be yourself. Don't worry whether people like you or not. And then you get into different contexts. In
different contexts, we have different selves. I think for me is the freeing, and you know, it's I think it's called multiple self theory. Like that's becoming much more mainstream and understood.
Yeah.
And if you look at some celebrities, they have these alter egos that they've channeled.
Oh yeah.
To help them perform, you know, and what it does, it gets distance. Then if somebody doesn't like that alter ego, and you're like, they just don't like that aspect of me. It's not of my identity, and so on.
It's crazy, because we know about the late Kobe Bryant, and this is the Kobe year 2024, and the Black Mamba
100%.
is absolutely was his alter ego, and I remember. I liked him, but he was always, you know, to me, Jordan 1B.
Right.
And I just thought he was an asshole.
Right.
Like wow, and then, you know, after he got done playing and listening to his interviews, I was like, I really like this dude.
Right.
He was way more in tune and in touch than I thought he was.
Right.
You know, he was like, people in the league thought he was kind of aloof and he wasn't close to anybody. Well, the Mamba was.
Right.
But Kobe had a different side to him, and it's interesting that you brought that up, because I recognized that as a player I didn't like him because I thought he was an asshole, but then as a person I'm like, holy moly, I really like this dude.
Right.
Yeah, I know that context matters for me, but I don't know if I had sure enough footing when I was growing up to realize that I could be disliked. That I could have one of my alter egos disliked.
Right. And I think that's the key.
Yeah.
And it's not, that's that aspect of yourself that's disliked. It's not your whole self.
Yeah, but even think about it though. Like, if the fear is to not be rejected and to be accepted and liked, then the courage feels like to accept being disliked. Even if it's your alter ego or a part of you.
Right.
Like, I know for me, the times that I've been like, I don't care if they like me or they don't, that's where I feel most freedom.
Right.
And then I think about how much, man, but as I'm thinking about raising my kids and I think about how I was raised, and it's like, we have everybody shaping us as we're growing up to what they want us to be. And it's very rare that we have people of authority and influence in our lives that are like, hey, it's okay to be who you are and make some mistakes.
Right.
And find your way. Carve your path through the woods and the swamp and the journey, instead of me telling you this is the path you ought to take.
Correct. Yeah. No, and I think, to me, the key in that is in that path, who do I want to be? What type of person do I want to be in that path? Or what type of person do I want to be as a basketball player or as a businessman or as a father? And to intentionally choose that versus the world telling me who I need to be.
Yeah.
Right? Where it sounds like the world or the church or someone told Colin how to be, or there's a set of expectations, either implicit or explicit, kind of shaping your life, shaping my life, that this is the way that I need to be and I need to fit in with these boundaries, versus now I'm like, who do I want to be? Not the question isn't who am I, because who am I is really a set of programs and habits based on the past that I didn't choose. As we get older, we can actually choose who do I want to be in these environments. And I think that's the shift for me. Okay, who do I want to be as a friend, as a husband, as a dad, and then to strategically, choose that and intentionally choose that versus, what do I think Colin wants me to be? And then I'll do that. No, I want to be this type of man and this type of friends, and then go and do that. And if he likes it, great. If he doesn't, that's okay. But I this is who I want to be. This is what I want to be remembered for.
Okay, devil's advocate.
Yeah, man.
You have a pretty damn good moral compass. How about people who don't have a moral compass and they think, I want to be this. I just, like, there's this character that I have seen in the gangster movies, and I want to be that. I want to be feared, and I want to be, like, in a way that is not productive to society or relationships, but that's what they've chosen to who they want to become. Or maybe they didn't have a father figure that helped shape them in a positive way. That
I mean, as you say that, I think, well, that's kind of like a sociopath or a psychopath,
right?
You know what I mean? I don't like feels like it's a different category in that, but I want to say that I think what came to my mind when you were saying that is the word character. Like, who we are and who I want to be, my character is how I live out my values, and to really be intentional about those values and then living them out, and if you really do deep dive into character, like a character, being a person of character, is a high performance attribute. That's what people in the military, in the business world, really want people of high character who then can live that out in the right way, where it is for the greater good versus being a sociopath or a psychopath. Does that make sense?
This whole conversation has made me think of just like when people are telling us what we ought to be, it's easier because we are just following a script.
Correct.
And then when people say, hey, you can be who you want to be, it's like, well, that seems more challenging because it's not.
We have to ask the question, well, who do I want to be?
Yeah. And then we also have to, sometimes you have to figure out what you want by experiencing what you don't want.
Correct, right. Yeah.
Which is hard for us to do. I'm thinking as a parent.
Right.
And I want my daughter, my son to carve out their life for themselves and them to find out who they are and who they want to be and find that sort of confidence in being able to shape their own identity. But if that goes against, some stuff that I want for them, am I going to have the moxie of a father to keep my mouth shut and allow them to figure out their own path? That's part of the guidance that we have to, but we have to live it. We have to live it first.
Right.
I think of my daughter, and she's so much like me, dude. She is so much like me, and I don't want her to carry the shit that I carried for a long time. But I also can't do that for her.
Right.
I want to guide her, but I don't want to. I can't do it for her. Like, she's got to experience a lot of this stuff on her own, and then be able to learn from it.
Right. It reminds me, just when I was at graduate school getting my degree, one of the lines that the founder of the school, Dan Allender, would always say is like, you can only take other people to places you've been. You know what I mean? Like if you're not working on yourself and your own freedom in that standpoint, if I'm not working on mine, how could I expect my kids to not be like that?
Yeah.
Like it's and it reminds me of a story where really one of the key things in my life when it kind of opened my eyes is I remember it was an October morning and we lived in Durham, North Carolina at the time, and I was out on the driveway with my oldest son. He was 18 months old, and it's just he and I. My wife's inside doing something, and so it was just our time. And I remember he's just dancing around in this joyous freedom, just being an 18-month-old boy, and I'm sitting there laughing and smiling. He goes, he says to me, he's like, Daddy, will you dance with me? And I couldn't. My first thought was, what if a neighbor walks by? What are they going to think of this dad who can't dance? The only time I ever danced was in college when I had too many drinks. Or what if my wife came outside and saw me dancing? She knows I can't dance. And so it was just this, back to the original point of this question, is that I didn't want people to judge me and not like me. And that's where just habitually I went to that place where I hesitated for a moment, where I couldn't freely dance with my son in that moment when he asked me. And that makes me obviously sad because I remember that. But that was a key moment in my life, because back to your point, I didn't want to pass on to him my struggles. And that just opened my eyes, like, man, I got to do some work inside here I want him to be able to freely dance, his whole life, and not be my age and deal with that.
You know what it feels like to be restricted by that fear. What would it feel like to have courage in that moment? Well, like, literally, what would it feel like for you to sink? Because courage is, in my mind, the antidote to fear, right? We're not going to not fear.
Right.
Like, if you were even put in that same position right now, you'd probably have the same sort of feelings, like, oh shit, like, what are people going to think? Or what would it feel like to act in courage and to dance?
Right. It's a good question. I think, to me, even before the courage is acceptance. For me to accept that I felt that way, and then to step into the courage. You know what I mean? I think that acceptance is the antidote to fear, and then from accepting it, I can then do it. I mean, you cannot accept it and then just force of will do it, but I think that's a harder path. Anyway, so the acceptance word came into my head in there, to then act with courage. How would it feel? I mean, it would just free. Just be free, right? Just be free to just let the spirit move in me and dance, and just dance as I felt how to dance.
And we are all better when we are free.
100%, right.
And that's why we're doing this. I think because we realize the constriction and the prison that we've felt growing up. Guys, if you've felt that, like, we understand. and you don't have to stay there. Like and nobody sees your prison.
Right.
That's like when we go and you actually go to a jail and you see people in prison.
Right.
It makes sense. They are constricted. They are confined. They can't go anywhere. We see it with our own eyes.
Right.
But how many guys are going through life? How many fathers? How many businessmen are feeling so alone, feeling restricted by fear, and nobody can tell. Nobody can see it.
Right.
They don't let anybody know.
Right.
And I know I've been there. Those have definitely been the darkest moments.
Right.
Is when nobody else can see my prison.
Right.
And I feel trapped, and I feel like I can't share it with anybody because they expect me to have my shit together.
Right.
As a leader of my household or my business, or even when I was within the church, like.
Well, I think that's where it goes back to what we need to do in those dark moments is turn on the light.
Yeah.
Back where we started, right? Is to turn on the light, because when the light comes on, the darkness, the power of the darkness, the power of the fear dissipates. Mm-hmm. You were still probably a little nervous running down there to do it, but once the light went on, I was like, oh, okay, like how the magnitude of the fear isn't. Instead of being this big, it kind of shrinks. It may still be there, but it's not this overwhelming weight and force that's just oppressive, right? And so anyway, that's why it feels like that's, we need to gently, kindly, in an accepting way, start to shine some light into that darkness in that area. And I go back and accept that it's there.
Yeah.
It's accept that this is a struggle.
Yeah.
Like I struggle with this.
Because that's what it felt like when you're talking about even just turning the light on. Okay, then how is that parallel to me being in that prison? It's really just like letting people see.
Right. But this is me.
Yeah.
Like, this is my
like this is really what's going on. Not the smile and the handshake and the hey, happy holidays.
Right.
Not that.
Right.
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 And the reason we don't do that. Fear of rejection.
Right.
And I think one of the reasons that we do the style of in which we guide and teach and is not of a state of guru-ness or we know all things and we don't suffer from anything. Like, it is very much share the struggle. Share our struggles as leaders and facilitators, to share our struggles so that the guys who we are with also know it's a place for them to share, to open up, to be honest, and the courage that's in that. It's like it can free us.
Right. Well, and those fears, that's part of who we are. Like, that's part of our story and our journey. And if we deny that, we're denying a part of ourselves.
Yeah. And that's an additional fight.
Correct. Right.
So you're not only fighting fear, you're denying and fighting that the fear exists.
Right. Right. That's why I think that's why I kind of jumped into that acceptance piece, that I think if we can just, I'm struggling with this, or this is an issue now, like facing the reality, whatever that may be, and just name it, like there it is, there it's on the table, and then, because then we can begin to shine the light or address it or talk about it or look at it from different perspectives. And then also, why I think being connected with other people is when we put it out there, it's amazing other people have other perspectives or ideas or suggestions or whatnot. Like, it's just, it just loses its power.
Yeah.
In that. But it's hard, right? Because it's hard. Like, I wasn't planning on sharing that story, dancing in the driveway and so on. Obviously there's still a part of me that struggles with that, because I could still feel that emotion. But my journeys, I want that freedom, because there's so much joy in that freedom, and I want my kids to have that freedom. I want people around me and to have that freedom and so on. So,
yeah. So guys, if you're struggling with fear, welcome to the club. Really hope that you enjoyed this, got some hopefully we were able to shed some light on some stuff. So we'll see you guys next time on the next episode. Better Men Connect. Share it, like it, subscribe, and keep in touch.